But you must come to Dubai. You must just go, wait, what?
Growing up as an American kid, the Middle East was painted in a different way to me. If Dubai was a stock, I would put all my money in it.
Zillow offers.
You only have one shot to get that consumer.
Do you see yourself here for a long time? Right. Good afternoon. I'm here with Scott Bond, the country manager of Property Finder. Welcome.
Thanks, Sam. I appreciate having me.
Awesome. So the first thing I wanted to ask you about actually is, when exactly did you decide to move to Dubai?
Yeah. So, I got the phone call from Property Finder sometime in mid-November of last year. I was kind of in this unique position in my career where I was, thinking about, do I continue to stay with Zillow Group where I was? Do I think about the next thing? And then there was this big journey, which was the potential of Property Finder. And, I spent a couple months meeting and talking with the team. And I would say it took 3 or 4 months before we really ended up getting there to that decision. I will tell you, my wife was not in on that decision at first. It took a little bit. But I think what really convinced me was, this market has so much growth potential. It's growing like crazy. Property Finder is this, amazing company full of great people. And everybody I met with in the company just kept advancing my interest more and more. Like everybody I talked to, I just got more and more excited about. And so I think at this point in my career, I think about where can I make an impact and where can I add value and where can I work with really great people and great customers and the whole thing. And Property Finder just happened to check all those boxes. And so after long conversations and a market visit and everything, we decided, hey, let's go do this. And but I will say it was not on the roadmap. There was never a conversation of the Middle East. There was never a conversation of, big relocation. It just sometimes, the right opportunity pops up with the right people at the right time. And this just happened to be that. So, very, very happy to be here as part of the journey.
Nice. So I've grown up here, and we have a lot of Brits. We have a lot of people from India, Asia, Europe. Americans, we don't have that many. Huh? So it was, it's interesting. I think I kind of understand where Property Finder is going with it, but what's your take on that? As you said, the Middle East, it's probably seen as this sort of far distant place.
Yes, for sure. And, let's be honest, growing up as an American kid, the Middle East was painted in a different way to me versus what it is in reality. And, once I got out here too, I noticed that even more. And so, the Middle East is this, amazing melting pot of all these, wonderful nationalities and everybody going forward with, this motion of, innovation and growth. And so it's exciting to be a part of that. And it's exciting to be caught up in this space where everybody, has this desire to continue to progress and grow. When I first started thinking about the move, I researched and it said 90% expats.
Okay.
I don't think I drilled down enough to know that it was, less than single digits, probably Americans, but that's okay because I've met, so many amazing people. One example is we have 42 nationalities in our office at Property Finder. And to be sitting in a room of, 8 to 10 people, and we all have these different backgrounds, it creates this diversity of thought, this diversity of ideas. We all look at the problem with a little different lens. And I think that's what's really exciting about, the Middle East in general, but especially with the Property Finder, we all come from these different backgrounds. And then you take a look at the companies that we all come from as well. So we come from different companies, different places. We grew up in a different way. And rather than having 10 people in a room that all think and, have the same exact background and experience, it allows us, I think, to solve problems in a more unique way. So that's exciting. That's an exciting thing about the company and the region for sure.
Yeah, I think it's probably one of the things that makes it quite difficult from property's point of view is to understand your customer, because they're all so different, right? And I'm talking about, I suppose you could apply it to agencies as well, but the end consumer, they probably relate Property Finder to realestate.com.au if they're in Australia, or Zillow in the US, or Rightmove.
Definitely.
And everything's going to have their own spin on it, right?
Yeah.
So understanding that cultural difference must be quite difficult.
Yeah. And what's really interesting too is, since everybody has this, well, not everybody. I think you grew up here, right?
Yep.
So there is a group of people that grew up here, which, I always love when I meet somebody who's grown up here because your experience is very different than others. But so many people have moved here, right? And so many people have gone through that experience of what it's like to go through the stress of moving to a new city, trying to find a property, having a portal that allows them the right data and the right transparency to understand the communities they want to be in, then get connected with an amazing agent. So I went through that journey here too, just like everybody. And so I have a unique perspective, being the country manager for Property Finder, to be able to think what our customers are going through, because I just went through that just 5-6 months ago. And so it's interesting when you meet new joiners in the company, because everybody, who moved here recently says, "Oh, I just went through the journey. I just used Property Finder. Here's 1 or 2 things I think we can do different." So it creates that, that speed of innovation as well. So
I think it was also one of the questions I like to ask people is always what their first impression is, right? And especially with your background. I mean, I actually look at the US real estate market, and I've spoken to a few people who've worked for some big companies in the US, and I love the way real estate is set up in the US. You got your buyer's agents, you got your seller's agents, you got the MLS, which is like genius, right? Makes it so simple and so straightforward. But you must come to Dubai and you must just go, wait, what? Properties listed with 20 agents? Like, what was your first take on the market?
There was a lot of learnings.
Okay.
I mean, I will tell you, there was a lot of learnings. And by the way, everything from just looking at photos on the site, right? So there were photos that we would look at and say, well, that doesn't look like the same type of photo I would see on a listing in the States. Stuff would be messy or cluttered or dark, or it wouldn't be, you wouldn't always see this like professional photography, because when something hits the MLS in the States, it's gone through all the process, right? And so that was like one thing. And then, looking at prices and seeing that things weren't always accurate. And that's a big effort that we have to clean that up. Taking a look at, you would see a property listed multiple times and go, well, wait a minute, is this the same villa that I saw over here? And so, again, that's a big initiative for us as well. So as a consumer, that journey was a little scary and daunting at first, and first thing I did, of course, was I reached out to an agent. And, thankfully I met an amazing agent who helped, educate me and understand what was going on. But it was very different. Obviously you mentioned the MLS. The MLS, I don't think I appreciated the MLS as much as I should have when I was in the States. And now that I'm here, I see it and I go, okay, I now understand the purpose of it, because for us at Zillow, although we had amazing partnerships with the MLS, in the early days, we were always trying to negotiate with them for, to get the content at the right time, to get the, to have the right agreements. And now I look back and I go, okay, wow, the MLSs have a lot of value to bring. And I think the other thing too is, the regulations, and, obviously United States real estate is incredibly regulated, from the mortgage aspect to title and escrow to buyer's agents, seller's agents, how they operate. I think we will get there here at some point in time. You can see that progression, but it's going to be a while, because that structure there in the US we're still a long ways away from what it is here. So a lot of learnings. And then I think the other thing too is just, the communities versus zip codes, villas versus houses, the subtle, small things. And it's definitely a journey. I understand why people say it takes 6 months to get really comfortable and know what you're doing, because it's taken all of that to get here.
I mean, we see it here at the office. We get new people, they join from the UK, from Europe. And when they come over, some of them have experience back home in real estate. And they're always just so confused, right, by the challenges that we face. But I think the timing, obviously you started this year, if I'm not mistaken.
April.
Okay. And we're now seeing that obviously like the land department is bringing in a lot of regulation, right? I know the regulation's actually always been there, but the enforcement has been lacking, right? And obviously on the one hand, myself as the owner of Macomb Properties, a couple of months ago, you launched Super Agent,
right?
With the idea to put the responsibility on the agents to be better, so that they stand out more, right? At the same time, you guys are adding extra dimensions to the quality of listings, so that agents again can do more to stand out. Now the land department's coming in with new rules, allowing only 3 agents to list, requiring contract. Do you think that the timing's almost perfect in that sense? That, obviously from my perspective, when I'm speaking to my team, I'm telling them, guys, you need to do this, A, because it's going to give you better exposure, but now B, because you have to. It's regulation, right?
The thing I think about there is, and this was something that was, first and foremost at Zillow, everything we did at Zillow was focused on the consumer, right? And so we always thought about we had personas. We called her Beth the buyer. Okay. And so everything there was focused on Beth, right? What does Beth need in that experience? And it's the same thing here with Property Finder. These changes that you've seen us make with Super Agent, how do we create the best experience for the consumer with the agent doing all the right behaviors? And we know that we have many more iterations of Super Agent to go, but the first iteration of it is measuring and tracking those right behaviors, because we know that's what the consumer is looking for. The consumer is saying, I want to be responded to. I want to have the listing have the right information. I don't want to see listings that are already sold when I go to find one on the site. And then, the same thing with, the WhatsApp rollout as well, being able to understand the data that goes into that experience. So, and then when it comes to, the new DLD regulations, it's, making sure that the consumer is seeing the right listing with the right brokers, and then, of course, getting responded to appropriately. So it is kind of this perfect storm of these things coming together. But again, at Property Finder, we really want to be focused, and we really are focused on what is best for that consumer experience through. And we do believe that translates into great experiences for our real estate agencies as well, because it will then in turn make your experience even better with that consumer, by the time you start working with them. So I think we start with that consumer journey. And by the way, if you look at, all the major brands that have won with consumers, whether it's Apple or Amazon or Uber, it start with that consumer journey, right? And then everything kind of falls into place from there.
Yeah. I mean, we've within our business as well, we've had some agents who have come to me and they've said, well, look, if I've got this owner, the property's a great price, but the owner doesn't want to sign the form. Right. Or I've got this property, it's brilliant, but I can't get in to get photos. Yeah. And it's like, there's always the but. Right. And it's they're missing the point that if an owner wants to sell a property, we need to get to the point where the owner is committed to that sale just as much as the agent. Right. I think that's the thing that's been missing here in Dubai. It's been too just off the cuff, right? Oh yeah, I'll sell the property if it's this price. And we've got 500 listings on Property Finder, and I can say with quite a lot of certainty that we could lose probably half of them and it wouldn't have a big impact on the actual business we would do. And I would actually consider ourselves one of the better agencies. Yeah. So I believe that there's other agencies out there that probably have up to 80% of their listings that are not, they're either not genuine or they're not really with sellers that are motivated to sell. And that's why, in Dubai, we've got in the region of, 500,000 properties that have been built in the freehold communities. And then we have, 90,000 listings suggesting that 1 out of every 5 properties is for sale. It's just not the case, right? We know it's not the case. And I can't wait for the day that we go onto Property Finder and we see 30,000 listings, but that 28,000 of those are with committed sellers, right? I think that's, for me, going to be sort of the turning point when we get to that point.
Well, and again, it goes back to, what is going to be best for the consumer, And I think the other thing too is, we have been in such a hot real estate market that we've seen growth everywhere. It's not just volume of properties being sold. It's not just prices and value, but it's also, we've seen a lot of real estate brokerages that have started as a result of this. You see that boom that comes out of that good market, and with that there becomes more competition, and these regulations start to go into place, can start to create a much more level playing field across the board. But again, we go back to that consumer experience. What is going to be best for that consumer? And I think for you as well, it goes back to when you get that consumer and you start working with them, what level of trust has been created? Have they already seen a listing with the right photos? Have they already seen a listing that has accurate pricing information? Have they already seen a listing that, has details of the community and is right? So they're not coming to you and then you're trying to take them to see 5 other properties, right? They came to you to see that one. And, trust is a really important word for us. And that's something that we want to continue to level in on as we go. We just had a massive advertising campaign, and part of that campaign was, trust. It was, your most trusted portal, here in the UAE. And again, so we want to be a part of that change as well. And we want to work with our customers to make sure that we are creating those really good consumer experiences. And the last thing I'll add to that too is, look, you only have one shot to get that consumer. When you think about our consumer here in the UAE, right? There's so many people moving in, and when are they going to work with us? When are they going to come to Property Finder? The first time they're going to come is when they're brand new to the UAE.
Yeah.
If they don't get that great experience, they might not come back to use our services again, which means they may not come to work with you again. And, we want to continue to enforce that trust.
Yeah. With regards to the changes you've made, if you take Super Agent, for example, with the data that you now have, what's the impact actually been on the website itself? Have you seen an improvement in answer rates? Have you seen, where do you stand on that?
Yeah. So, it's unfortunate that there's a large chunk of, inquiries that historically go unanswered. And, I know for a broker like yourself, it's, that can send, shivers through your body to think about. But that's unfortunate. And by the way, that's nothing new. That's not a UAE issue. That's a portal issue across the world, and it's a real estate issue across the world. But we don't want any consumers to go unanswered. We want them to get that experience that we think is world class. So some of the changes that we've made, we have seen an increase in response time. We are seeing an increase in actual responses being made, which we think is the right move for the consumer and ultimately the right move for the agency as well. So we are starting to see some growth there. And, I would say we saw it relatively quickly as well.
Yeah.
And, we believe that we have a duty to help those consumers with the best experience. And we also know that our agencies are, share that same interest as well, creating that great experience for those consumers.
Yeah. And if you take the Super Agent, what's sort of the long-term objective with this? I go back to Airbnb, Superhost, right?
Yes.
It's sort of the big tag there. I know that it's a massive, for someone that is, because we now have a short-term license as well. And at the moment, we're still using the portals as our main lead gen. Yeah. We started during the summer period. So it's more about, let's say, semi-short-term stays. But a big thing on Airbnb is getting that Superhost tag. But I also know that on Airbnb, it's a lot more difficult to get that tag than it is on Property Finder at the moment. I think it's literally a 10% ratio of people that have it. If I look at Super Agent, I think in the company, we've got about 80% of our team that have that badge. So that suggests obviously a much higher ratio. Right. What is the... I'd like to think that we've got a lot of good agents. So
that's a high ratio, though. You're doing something right, Sam.
We are on that front, so that's great. But at the same time, I'm assuming that the percentage is higher than 10%. And I guess what I'm getting at is the idea to refine it over time so that someone with a Super Agent ban is really, really recognized as one of the best agents to work with?
Absolutely. Okay. I think what we see is the first version of this, right? With everything we're rolling out, all the new products, we will continue to iterate. I had a conversation recently with a client. I said, there is a roadmap there we will continue to think about. And again, it goes back to that consumer experience. What is the consumer wanting? Is it response time? Is it, agents that are, true experts in the community? Is it, are they looking for agents that have done a certain number of transactions, certain amount of reviews? There's all those things that go into it. And look, there's a lot of things that we're not able to track as part of it, but I think the evolution of this, we will continue to see. We want to be at a place where consumers are being paired up with, not only super agents, but also agents that are tracking to become super agents, right? So, what we see is there's a subset of super agents today. There will always be a subset of agents that are working towards to get that and will that really want that status and will be doing those right behaviors. And so we will continue to see this iteration and this evolution, just like everything that we're rolling out right now. And I think, like you've seen, the website today isn't what it was, 5 years ago, right? And so we'll continue to see this evolution and growth. And what is the consumer looking for? So.
Nice. Yeah, I went to the launch event of the Super Agent, and one of the things that struck me was that everyone that was there, I actually didn't know many of them. Yeah. And I've been doing real estate in Dubai for a long time, for 10 years now. So I actually know a lot of the good agents. Yeah. And it sort of validated a belief that I've got. And a lot of people focus on experience in real estate. They say, I want an experienced agent. Sometimes I really believe that some of the best agents are actually the ones that are in their first few years. Yeah. Not necessarily like brand new, but when you've been doing the job for a year, you're still very hungry. Yeah. You're very eager to stand out any which way you can. if you're the kind of person who's been doing it for a long time, maybe has some good money in the bank, you can afford to take weekends off. You can, but from the consumer's point of view, that might not be as good. So I thought it was very telling that when I got there, I was like just looking around, I was like, whoa, this is a lot of new agents, and it's clear that these are the people that are looking to stand out any which way they can.
Yeah. I think it's about the fundamentals, right? So you think about if you're learning a new, if you're learning a new hobby, right? Maybe if you're learning to play guitar for the first time, so you're going to start with all the basics, right? What are all the chords you need to know? How do you hold the pick the right way? How do you hold the guitar? How do you do all that? Over time, as you get really good with it, you might get a little, loose with it to some degree, right? But that doesn't mean that you're not good at it anymore. In fact, you could be world class at it, but some of those fundamentals might not apply the same way. And I think we see the same thing, those who are in the early days. And this is why you love hiring, brand new agents, because you can train them the way that you want them to work with McCone Properties. And, it's that same kind of thing that we see in the early days of brand new agents. They're doing all those things to a T. Now, we have to take into account, though, the agents that have been doing it for a long time and have all this amazing experience, because that doesn't mean they're not doing it the right way, right? And I think the continued evolution that we will see is, how do we capture that? How do we capture that agent that is, doing things with their referral network, that is creating great experiences, but, might be really busy, day-to-day showing houses. So there's all sorts of things we will continue to take into, the concept, if you will. Reviews is a good thing too. How do we capture that? So there is that like basic fundamentals of a brand new agent doing everything, I'm not going to say the right way. I'm just going to say, to the playbook maybe. And then there is that agent who's been doing it for a long time that has their methods and their ways. And neither one is right or wrong, but, I think we have to go back to which aspects of this is the consumer going to want. They're going to want the aspects of the consumer, of the experienced agent who's been doing it for a long time, or the basic fundamentals of maybe the brand new agent. So.
Yeah, nice. We've this year, for the first time, we've really focused on branding.
Yeah.
So in the past, we used to have a landing page, which was, I always saw the website as like, okay, a box to tick, right? Yeah. This year, we've invested a lot of money into it. We're now trying to drive people to the website. We're doing these podcasts because we want people to see what we're about, what message we want to send. As you mentioned before, I'm on TikTok now, which is a little bit mad.
Seeing your content. Absolutely.
So we're sort of very, very trying to do on that front. And I think since this year as well, we've probably seen a bit of a change with Property Finder as well, right? You guys seem to be putting a lot more effort into branding as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. So our marketing department is phenomenal. From our CMO all the way down to everybody who's in the team. They're a joy to work with, and they have incredibly diverse backgrounds as well. And the experience of companies they come from really helps them to see the problem in a unique way, versus maybe if you had folks who came in only from the real estate business, or maybe from the portal business. So it's been great to learn from them, and also share with them some of the things that I think will work too with our brokerages and our consumers. But definitely taking a multi pronged approach to it. Everything from the digital marketing we're doing to the outdoor marketing that you saw us doing the campaign this summer. To we're taking a big social approach as well. Really pumping up the LinkedIn content and some of the stuff that's out there. So it's look, we have to find these consumers in all aspects, and today it's more fragmented than ever. Maybe 10, 15 years ago, just one billboard on Sheikh Zayed Road would have been all you needed. Today, it's how do you reach them on TikTok? How do you reach them on Facebook, Instagram, outdoors, radio? This isn't really a TV market, but if it was, we would be on there as well. So you have to take all approaches to try to find the consumer. And, I would say that, we're looking at all of them, and you see us utilizing all of them as well. And one other big aspect of it too is the event space, from a marketing perspective. And I think, there's kind of it's probably a pre-COVID and a post-COVID approach. I think everybody has kind of gone through this as a business. Pre-COVID events were a big part of what we did. At least that's what I'm being told. Yeah. Of course, once COVID hit, it kind of caused all of us to say, hold on, how do we do this going forward? Now we're at a place where we're starting to wake up from that a little bit and say, okay, now we are comfortable doing the events and we want to get out and see our customers more. So it's a big initiative of mine of how do we better connect with all of our customers across the board? And then, at some point in time too, how do we make the end user, that consumer, feel a certain connection to the brand too, whether that's, in the Home Finder campaign or those are the billboards. So it's both, the B2B and the B2C side, allowing our consumers to see us.
Nice. About 2 months ago, I went on to assign a premium listing for a villa that we had on the Palm.
Yeah.
And I think it cost us about 2,100 credits, which is in the region of 3,300 dirhams.
Yeah.
About 3 years ago, we used to be able to buy a premium listing for maybe 600 dirhams, something like that. Okay, so the cost of marketing has clearly gone up, right? What's the justification for that?
Yeah. So, it's no secret that the model for us changed here a couple of years ago. We have a pricing credits model, as you know. And, the way that we look at it is it's a supply and demand. And there's a lot of different factors that go into how we think about pricing. It's not any one thing. It's not just what's the supply, what's the demand, but we also take a look at, what is that ROI that you're going to get from that as well. So although that price of the credits has gone up and that price to list, we also know that the volume of sales in these communities has gone up as well. Prices, as we know, have gone up as much as 20 to even 40% in some communities. So we really look at it as a model that is, dynamic in the sense that, it will change over time. So as the market continues to go, we may see changes that, keep up with that. As the market slows down a little bit, we will be making changes that are going to be on your behalf to make sure that there is a dynamic ROI so that, we're not stuck in this one stagnant price because, as the prices of the communities continue to change, right? The villas continue to change. We don't think any one model, just one fixed price is the right way to go about it. We think that a dynamic price based upon what the algorithm and the model tells us is really key. So there's a lot of factors that go into it. We take a look at how long does that listing take to sell? What is that transaction, probability going to look like? But supply and demand is really crucial when we look at these markets. And, I would love to think that we get it right 100 times out of 100 times. I'm sure that, we could have a debate on some communities over others. But as a whole, we want to think that, in your key communities, you are getting that strong ROI and that you are able to ultimately see a good return on your investment with Property Finder, because that's what it's about, is that value that you get in the end.
I mean, when I saw that, the first reaction I actually had was I was somewhat happy because we, over the last 2 years, we've gone from a company of 10 agents to 50 agents. And that's come with big changes in terms of the revenue we generate and obviously what we can spend. So I can turn around now and I know that we've got, over 50,000 credits a month that we can use, and 2,000 credits is a lot, but it's manageable, right? And I think, some of the bigger companies out there will probably feel the same. But obviously, the good thing about it is I now go back to the agent and I say, is this property genuine, good to go, good price, really sort of drill down on that. But if I was Macomb Properties of 2 years ago, where we would have maybe, a fifth of the credits we have, assigning one premium like that would literally, eat into a massive chunk of our marketing budget. Do you not feel that by making these moves, you might be widening the gap between the big and the small?
Well, so, the program that's put in place, we believe does allow a fair market for all. So, part of the beauty of the model is that, somebody who's new and getting started can purchase the number of credits for them to ultimately help their business versus maybe somebody who's on the other side who can purchase, thousands of credits. Now, I like to think that we also are going to help from an account management standpoint to optimize those credits as well. Our stance would be, hey, don't put those credits on that listing. You might in the early days choose not to use that as a premium, in the early days. Maybe there's other things that you can use to market that, whereas you have other properties as well where you can maximize your credit. So I think it's also really important that we show up with a business consultative nature to be able to help you to understand where you want to go. Now, not everybody has, the level of maybe admins and support that you have because of the size of your brokerage, but that's where I think we really want to show up and be able to help narrow that gap to say, where can we help you to optimize your spend and help you to optimize your business? Because we grow together. The market grows, we grow, you grow, we all grow together. And I think that's what is really important from my standpoint. And just like we go back to say, want to create an amazing consumer experience, we also want to create an amazing client experience on the B2B side. And it starts with our commercial team as well to show up to help you to navigate that. But we do believe that it's a fair market that allows anybody to come in the early days and grow. And by the way, we've seen that in the last 2 years. We've seen some new brokerages that have spun off and started. Some super agents, if you will, that have spun off and started their own brokerage. Then they get a chance to start up. Maybe they don't buy 50,000 credits to start, but they start with 4,000 or 5,000, and then they start to grow from there. And that's what it's all about, is getting a chance to help our customers grow and see them go from, I don't use the word small, but maybe a boutique starting out brokerage to then becoming, achieving the dreams that they have. So, and I think like everything, there's a continued evolution of it, right? Yeah. Again, do we always get it right 10 times out of 10? No, but when we don't get it right, we want to listen to our customers and we want to make sure we're able to create the changes that we need. Because again, it goes back to, doesn't work for you, it probably won't work for us, probably won't work for the consumer. And there is that model that we want to be mindful of.
Yeah. I think for me, when COVID struck, there was a group chat that was created between all the company owners, talking March 2020. And we were a company that was very aggressive on off-plan. So we used to put most of our money into Google Ads and Facebook, Instagram. And we had a very small package on Property Finder. And we actually, I remember there was obviously a lot of back and forth. Country shut down, basically couldn't do viewings, business dried up, and we were one of the few companies that actually pulled our listings off Property Finder in sort of retaliation. But fast forward 6 months after that, it was actually the first, I can't remember what it was, to be honest. I think it might have actually been a podcast that I listened to from another real estate company here in Dubai. And what I recognized was that we're not competition. The portals and agencies, we each have our goals in terms of revenue, and sometimes there's a little bit of a misalignment there, but that doesn't mean that we're working against each other. And all of a sudden, I remember I sat with Ines, and I think Marcelo joined as well, and we literally said, okay, what's a good plan here to get us from being essentially a non-player on the portals to being someone significant? And that was really a big part of the journey for us. And I think my advice to anyone that's out there that's maybe starting their business and looking at the credit system that Property Finder has, or even let's say Bayou, so we all know that they're increasing their prices because they've just announced it, is go to these things and again, really try and maximize what you can get out of it. Because I don't believe that we buy a certain amount of credits. I don't believe that we buy a certain amount of leads even. What we buy on Property Finder is a certain percentage of market share. That's how I see it. Our credits will take us so far. But if Property Finder go out and drop their prices by 50%, all we'll have is everyone will have double. And the market share will stay the same. If the price is double, everyone will have half of what they've got and things will stay the same. So I think the moment I changed that sort of view on it, I stopped fighting it. I just started thinking, okay, it's up to us to maximize that market share that we're able to afford.
Well, and I love your comment too on, you sat down with our team, you sat down with Dinesh and Marcelo and, had that dialogue with them on, and I'm sure that dialogue was, okay, how can we partner? How can we work together? How can we grow? And, I will tell you a big part of my work in the first 5-6 months that I've been at Property Finder is, putting a face to the commercial team. And, we have an amazing team. We have an amazing group of people. But I think also, coming up post-COVID, we haven't done all the events. We haven't done all the connections that I know I want to do. And I think a big part right now is making sure that we have this dialogue. We have this open, honest dialogue with our customers. And sometimes it can be really hard. It can be really painful. But if we don't sit down and we don't talk about where we are, where we're going as a business, the credit system, the price of a premium versus the price of a standard versus, at the end of the day, we're all in it together. And I think that there has been this disconnect that I've heard from the market to some degree about, being out there and being in front and being that face. And I'm here to provide that. I'm here to do that. I'm here to take the difficult conversations and I'm here to face them head on. I think at the end of the day, what I want everybody to know is, we are here to be partners. And I realize that not every change that we make, everybody's going to love. And that's where I go back to say, we won't get it right 10 times out of 10, but where we do get it wrong, we're going to listen. We're going to take the feedback and we're going to hopefully make the changes that do work. And then as well, I want to be here to make that dialogue. I want my team to be here to be those strong business consultants, to ultimately show our customers that we're here to help them grow. We're not this big commercial entity that we don't care about. We do care because I care, and I know my team cares as well. So I love getting to have this dialogue with our customers.
Yeah, I think when I first started the business in 2013, Bizzle were the major player.
Yeah.
And I think the big question that no one's really spent time asking is what happened? What happened where Bizzle dropped off and Property Finder emerged as the leading platform? Because I remember a good friend of mine was actually one of the first people that Bizzle ever hired, and he built their website, right? Their property section.
Yeah.
And what it struck me was that it was the customer service that changed. So back in 2013, Property Finder started to really hire the likes of Marcella, who would actually come to our office once a month, sit with us, maximize what we were getting out of it, and so on. And it sounds so stupid because you would assume that when we're paying the amount of money that we're paying, we would be doing this on our own. But what I think was missed is that we're so busy, we're so caught up in the day-to-day that I remember in 2018 when I first started the business, there was a period where our listings were offline on Property Finder for 7 days. And I didn't even realize. And I called my account manager at the time, and he just gave like a very blunt sort of, well, you should have picked up on that. And I was just a 23-year-old winging it, right? But the point is that I don't think that would happen today. I think if there was a drastic drop in the number of leads or impressions that we got, it would be noticed and it would be brought to my attention. We would work through it together. And I think Bizzle, obviously, they had the whole car section that really took off for them in the classifieds. And I think the attention just was missed, right? And I think that's, what you're doing with regards to the events and showing the appreciation and even bringing us in for a coffee, like Marcella was mentioning. I think it was called PF Talks or something like that. Yeah. They're great, because we do have insights and we do obviously think that we can do it better, right? Everyone does.
Of course,
but that's the idea. And for us to give that feedback is quite important. And we're happy to do so.
Well, I certainly would I would love to hope that if those listings went offline, somebody's flagging, somebody knows. That's your worst nightmare there, and it becomes ours as well. And look, again, we have challenges from time to time. Like, let's be real. Like, there are challenges that happen. What I want to think though is when we have those challenges, that we are there with an empathetic approach and tone. We are there with a business consultative nature and a customer first approach. And hey, I sat with a client a week ago who told me that we have not been, and I listened to everything, and it hurts, it eats you as a leader. But what it also does is allows us to say, okay, but where do we have the holes and where can we make the changes so that we can be better? And I think, one of the things I've really stressed with my team since arriving, and we have an amazing team. We really do. I'm so proud to be able to work with them every single day. And I tell them this all the time. But how do we give them more tools? How do we give them more tools to succeed? It's not good enough just to show up and have a great relationship. That might work in a hot market. But what if the market slows down? What tools do we have to make you better? What tools do we have to help optimize your account? Where are we there to help you guide your business? And to me, at the end of the day, if you look at all the portals across the world, we're all doing kind of the same thing. Yeah. The ultimate separator, though, is in that experience and that service. And the example I use is coffee, right? Like, you can get coffee anywhere. Here in Dubai, you can get coffee really anywhere. Yeah. But, maybe you go to Starbucks because they've created that experience, right? And that's the way I want to think about it. You can put your listings anywhere, but do you choose to put it with somebody who maybe you feel that level of service and expertise? And again, I want to make sure that that's the place where you get it from us. Yeah. No, I think you guys have kind of gone on that right track. And the thing to remember as well is that you can't please everyone, right? It's going to be, again, and a lot of the times when myself 2 years ago, not pleasing me was more a frustration at our inability to take advantage of what the portals could offer. Right. Now that we can do that, now that we've found a business model that aligns itself with that, it's a lot easier for Ines and me to sit down, have a conversation, see where we can improve. Right.
And I think that's a lot of the time the mistake that any sort of business leader can make is blaming others rather than self-reflecting. I mean, at the end of the day, we all have the same chance, right? The portal's available to everyone. Yeah. Yes, if you're bigger, you might get a better deal because you've got economies of scale. That's just the reality, right? So get bigger.
Yeah, that's a solution.
Right?
But at the same time, though, I'd love to think too that we I want to think of all of our customers as having opportunities, right? And, so those customers that are in those early days, I want to be able to go back to when you first started your brokerage, and there's somebody out there right now that's doing it. And I want to think that we can show up and still provide a service and help them out because one day they will become, Macomb. And so again, I think how do we make sure that we show up with that right level of service, with the right product, help them optimize. They might not be able to get to 50,000. They might get 3,000, but either way, we want to have a product for them because, they will grow. They do have aspirations. Everybody has that same opportunity long term.
So. Yeah. And that's what makes the city great. It's sort of,
absolutely.
As a 23-year-old, I started this business, and now to be, 10 years later, to have a business which is up there with some of the top companies in this city. If this was the UK or if this was New York or Los Angeles, I mean, that would be near impossible to get that kind of exposure within the market, right? So there's so much opportunity, and I think it's just important that we find ways to make sure that that's available to everyone, right?
Well, I mean, look at the way that Dubai has grown.
Yeah,
we've all seen that video of 40 years ago to today, right? So this is the land of opportunities, and I've often said since coming here, if Dubai was a stock, I would put all my money in it because it will continue to grow, right? And that's why people come here is opportunity, and you're right, the level of competition, and not that there's not massive competition here, but the level of competition in the US or the UK and getting established is very different. Whereas here, you can realize that dream. And everybody comes here with the idea of I'm going to make it. I'm going to do something big. So being able to help support that dream is really key.
Nice. Speaking of, I don't know what the right word here is, but failures, I'm going to say it. Zillow offers.
Yes.
So you were part of that.
Wow. I need to settle into my chair a little bit.
I mean, so again, from a starting point, I love to see people try stuff. I think that's the one thing that is so important. I remember I look at a company like Allsop and I really don't know them too well, but I actually take a lot from them because part of the journey for me to get to where we are today was actually taking a lot of inspiration from them. And along the way, for them to get to now being pretty much probably one of the biggest companies in Dubai, they made a lot of mistakes, but they also made a lot of right decisions. And I think that's just part of business, and you can't have successes without the failures. It's been said a million times. But Zillow offers is obviously, for those that don't know, the idea was that Zillow would essentially come in and buy properties directly from owners with sort of a digitized offering, right? It didn't go well, and they shut it down, I think maybe a year ago or something like that, right? And you were part of that team.
I was,
Okay.
So, I probably haven't done enough therapy, after the process because, I could probably get emotional even thinking about it and talking about it because it was such a massive part of my life. So I joined Zillow in 2016 as a general manager in the Premier Agent division, leading inside sales there with the region, and then got a chance to own a second region. And then all of a sudden I got pulled aside by our chief revenue officer at the time, which was Greg Schwartz. And he said, hey, we're starting, this iBuying division, which I kind of known about. And he said, we want you to go lead the sales team and go build it. And it was an opportunity of a lifetime for me. That was in, early 2018. I was honored to be a part of it. And we were a very small team that sat around a table like this in the early days. So we were this startup inside of this, amazing tech company. And the idea was, to create a better consumer experience, right? It all goes back to that consumer experience because buying a home in the US, and I think we can probably argue buying a home anywhere is still incredibly stressful and daunting. And so we saw iBuying as a way to create a better consumer experience from beginning to end. The concept was you could sit on your couch and you could fill out a form. Somebody would contact you to talk to you about your house, push a couple buttons, an appraiser would come out and look at your house. Next thing you know, you would get a digitized offer. If you liked it, you push the button. you close within the next 7 days, and you might never have left your couch except for to let the estimator come into your home. And we actually acquired homes from start to finish in as quickly as 10 days sometimes, which was just amazing customer experience. Now, we didn't always get it right, of course, because we were startup learning in the early days, but we grew to 25 markets almost overnight.
Would those be 25 states?
25 cities within.
Okay.
Yeah. So there were some states where we were in 2 or 3 different markets.
Yeah, like California would obviously be broken up. Okay.
Yeah. So, and I grew my sales team from scratch, from 0 people to 400.
Oh, wow.
And, again, overnight, I mean, and we were all in on Zillow offers as a business. And, it was an amazing experience. Zillow decided ultimately in late 2021 to go back to that core operating model, which was that, how do we help, a buyer ultimately search and find? Along the way, we acquired Zillow Home Loans as well, which was the mortgage arm now. And of course, Zillow has continued to expand. And so, it was a tough decision the day I got the phone call, a couple weeks in advance to say, hey, we're going to shut this business down. Ultimately, I would, you can probably look at a couple different ways. Did the business fail? You could look at it that way from the outside. I think in the inside, I think it was a returning to the core operating principles of where does the company want to go long term? Because, if you hold 10, 20, $30 billion worth of assets on your balance sheet and the market turns, like we're seeing it do in the States right now, that's a scary place for a high margin, high cash business to be in, which Zillow was. And I tell you what, we learned a ton. I know Zillow learned a ton. All of us who were a part of the experience learned a ton. It made me the leader that I am today. I say that I probably need some therapy because, this as a business owner, you go all in. And it wasn't until I got the phone call in late October of last year, that we were going to shut it down, that I came up for air and I breathed a little bit as a leader. And I kind of stopped and I said, well, hold on. I've been putting every ounce of energy in my career, into this, into my team, into the mission, into where we go. And I kind of stopped and said, okay, well, what do I want to do next? And then that, of course, was when Property Finder happened to call, and hence your first question, how did I get here today? But yeah, it was quite the experience. And then I think, again, I go back to, it was born out of, how do we create a better consumer experience to sell and to buy a home without having to go through all the headaches that we know the process brings today? So,
it's one of those where I think prop tech in particular, I mean, we've seen extremely huge growth in markets like fintech and all these other areas, but property seems to be one of those that always goes back to the traditional model, right? And I suppose in my case, thankfully, right, because it allows the agents to continue to be involved. But it does seem to have that sort of human element, which is tough to sort of to get rid of. And I do find it interesting. And I mean, I also, I was listening to a podcast where they were talking about Adam Newman with the WeWork. And the guy made a really good point where he said a lot of people look at Adam Newman as a failure with WeWork. And obviously it was originally at IPO expected to be a $45 billion company. It's now a $3.5 billion company. And he said, well, isn't this all about perspective? It's a $3.5 billion company. That's not a failure. You don't put that. So when he now goes out and he gets $350 million from Andreessen Horowitz, he's getting it for a reason.
Of course.
A lot of the times where, if maybe the final goal wasn't achieved, like it was with in the case of Zillow Offers, doesn't mean that it was necessarily an entire failure. It's just that the company just pivoted back to what it knows, right? And we've all been there. We're doing McCone Living now, which is a short-term business. And my God, the first 3 months, just embarrassing. Just the amount of lessons that we've learned. I was like, you come into it, you see short-term companies think, how hard can it be, right? So you go into it and maybe you get, one person doing something that they're not quite familiar with or whatever it might be, take on a few properties in the wrong locations and all of a sudden, it's just not working. But obviously the fortunate thing we have in that particular circumstance is that it's a low cost business. So we have the time to step back, reassess and adjust, right? But obviously in the case of Zillow Offers, it was just, I'm sure you guys were spending a fortune, right? In terms of outlay, right? To buy these planes.
Yeah, of course. And and that was the rocket ship, right? That was the rocket ship we were on to the moon to become that, some people said the Amazon of real estate, if you will. But, you say something that's really fascinating, though, which is how we think about these businesses, right? And whether it's Property Finder or it's Macomb Properties or, Zillow or WeWork, right? We had a core value at Zillow, which was move fast, think big. And, part of that was embracing the idea of, if you have an idea and you want to go all in, let's go all in. Let's think big. Let's move fast on the concept. Let's not, Rich Barton will be the first one to say, let's not be afraid of failure. Let's not be afraid of learning from our mistakes as we go, whether it's in, the holiday homes business or anything we do. And I think, you can't make those big bets without knowing that not all of them are going to pay off. And Zillow, for example, learned so much through that process. It's now the 3 or 4.0 of the company as they go forward, right? So they learned iBuying maybe wasn't the space for them, but now they've pivoted into other, which I know are other innovative concepts. Return to the core business, and look, I think you'll see Property Finder, do these things over time as well, where we will not be afraid to make big bets, and if they're right, great. They'll work for our consumers and for our brokers. If they're wrong, well, then we will make that pivot back as well. But, you can't be afraid to take those big bets as long as there's a calculation to them, right? You may become the biggest, holiday homes business, here in the region. Or 2 years from now, you may go, hey, it's a small part of what we do and that's okay. And you never know until you try. And I think encouraging that level of, innovation is really important in our companies.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's, and that's why, I look at Zillow offers and I'm fascinated by it, because it's easy to talk about successes, but it's sometimes a little bit more challenging to talk about what might be seen as the failures, but they might actually be some of the best parts. I mean, after March 2020, we all of a sudden were losing money for the first time in the business, losing substantial amounts of money. And that was the moment where we realized we needed to pivot. And we're talking small numbers here in comparison to these other big companies. But it was really that failure of those 6 months that got us to become the company that we are today. If we didn't have COVID that really crushed us, we wouldn't have this today. Right. And that's why it's really down to that. It's down to that failure of that period that helped us learn. And obviously every self-help and blah, 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 they all talk about these things, but when you actually live it, you really get to see the value that it's got.
It's easy to read those books and go, wow, everybody learned so much. And then, you have to then jump yourself into those shoes, and it's really painful to go through. And I'll tell you, myself as a leader, as a functional business unit owner, as a employee, is probably as a father and a husband, all those things, man, I learned a ton about myself through that process and through that journey of growing. And we were going to the moon, to then we ran into some challenges, we learned, and then now we're not going to do this business anymore. And I would say, look, I'm a way better leader today as a result of that. If I had been in a role where I didn't get a chance to go through that, I don't think I would be a half the leader I am today. And I love to think that it really shaped us, and it shapes companies, it shapes people, et cetera. It's also that innovator's dilemma too, right? What if you don't pivot? What if you don't try the next thing? What if you don't make an attempt at these other business units? Who is making an attempt at them? We know the stories of all the companies over the years that were number one in the category. And then at a certain point in time, we don't even hear about them anymore. And because getting comfortable and doing the same thing over again is easy, but if you don't force the bets, if you don't force the innovation, you might not exist 5 years from now. I think you'd be saying, wow, I wish I would have gone through all those painful learning experiences, because you might exist. So you have to be willing to do it, because somebody's out there right now saying, I want to become that company and then some.
Yeah, exactly.
And you have to go, well, who do I want to become?
So exactly. No, it's all really interesting. I think it's great to be in a city like this where we have so many examples of that sort of competitive environment, and where it's still done in a way that I do believe is still somewhat sort of harmonious, right? So, You've got children?
I do, yes.
Nice.
Yeah, we have an 11-year-old son. His name's Jackson.
Okay.
And when we first started talking about moving to Dubai, he said, that sounds exciting, but let's not do that.
Okay.
And then we came out and we visited, and he said, look, I'll go and I'll visit. It'll be a fun vacation for a week, but we're not really moving, right? And then, of course, the time came when we said, okay, well, we're going to move, and then it got real. But what? He's done really well. He's
Okay.
adapted really well, and like business leaders, we have to adapt. Kids are amazing at adapting. So yeah, it's been quite an experience.
I think obviously having grown up here, I get asked the question a lot, right? What's it like to grow up here from an adult's point of view? And like my wife and I are hoping to have kids soon. And I can't wait to raise them in this city because touching back on nationalities, I went to Emirates International School, and this is in the 90s, and we had International Day every year.
Yeah.
And we would have, I think, 160 different nationalities.
So
in my
amazing.
classroom alone, we would have about 20.
Yeah.
So I became so comfortable just interacting with those different cultures. And I think your kid is gonna just, his world's changing. But I do believe it can be a great experience.
It's an amazing experience. I mean, and look, we lived in in a community in Seattle that everybody kind of looked like us to some degree, and there wasn't a ton of diversity. And he went to a school with a group of kids that came from similar backgrounds. And then all of a sudden we moved here, and there was a defining moment early on. So we moved in late March, and Ramadan obviously started, a couple of days after we had got here, and we had to educate ourselves about Ramadan because that's not something we historically have known much about.
Yeah.
And we educated Jackson on it as well. And I remember we were at Starbucks. We were sitting in the parking lot eating at Starbucks. And we had gone through this whole conversation about Ramadan, about eating out in public. And Jackson stopped and grabbed us both. And he said, hold on, it's Ramadan. We're not supposed to be eating. What if somebody sees us in the middle of the day? That's disrespectful. And of course, we talked to him about, what it means in Dubai and everything else. But for him to pick up on that and grasp that concept at 11 years old, that was such a moment of growth and such a moment of, wow, like he's getting exposed to something that I didn't get exposed to until I was in my late 30s now, right? And so again, that diversity of thought, that diversity of exposure, it's going to be amazing for him. I'm really excited to see what it does for his future, because I didn't get that exposure at all. So
it's something he'll take with him for the rest of his life for sure.
Yeah.
I think it's we take it for granted here as if this is normal, but it's not, right? To have this level of just meeting different cultures and everything, it's fantastic.
Yeah, 100%. It's going to be quite the journey in the process for all of us. I mean, and myself, I haven't sat in a conference room with all these different nationalities before. And, diversity of my team was something that was, we preached and we hired for and we focused on back in the States. But this is diversity to a whole new level. And, again, it's fun to sit around the table and think about solving that problem with all these different thought processes that otherwise, I would look at the problem one way and someone's going to look at it, 5 different ways. So, and that is why this place has grown it the way it has. Opportunity, different backgrounds, different experiences, but everybody's still looking at it from the standpoint of, growth and, achieving our goals and our dreams. So,
yeah. Do you see yourself here for a long time?
That's always the $1 million question. I think I have the same approach that everybody has, when it comes to, I think everybody says to me, Scott, we moved to Dubai for 2 years and now we've been here for 10.
Yeah.
Everybody I talk to has that same thing. And everybody also says, get over that 6-month mark. And then once you hit that 6-month mark, the weather starts to change. You go outside, you can do more things. So I'm really looking forward to experiencing an entire year because we've only hit that 5-6 month mark now. But I think the thing that I do see is, that continued opportunity and growth. Property Finder has so much growth ahead, and I'm here to make a lasting impact on the company and the people on the team and our customers as well. So I didn't come out here for a short-term journey. I came out here to make long-term impact. What that means long-term, I don't know. And I say I don't know because I didn't know a year ago I would be here.
Yeah.
I didn't even know 7 months ago I would be here, right? And so I think, where does the journey continue to take us and where is the ride? I always tell people, be open-minded and have an open heart, because you never know where you may go, and I'm excited to see where that continues to go. But I have a lot of work to do at Property Finder.
Yeah.
I have a lot of customers to connect with. We have a lot of different changes to make. So I'm excited to make sure that I'm a part of that whole journey as well before I think about whatever the future may hold.
Yeah, very nice.
Yeah.
Well, look, thank you very much for being on here. And
Thank
I
you.
hope you enjoyed it.
Yes, absolutely. I thank you so much for the invite, Sam. Really appreciate getting a chance to connect with you and have a transparent conversation about everything that's happening and where we're going. And so really appreciate your partnership as well. So thank you.
Absolutely. All the best.